Dive into an unforgettable underwater adventure. A scuba diver's typical day turns thrilling when a giant swordfish appears out of nowhere, swimming straight at them. This heart-pounding moment will keep you on the edge of your seat. Will the diver be okay? Witness the diver's bravery as they face this unexpected danger. Full of excitement and surprising twists, this is one encounter you won't want to miss. In 1997, Emma Fisher, an experienced scuba diver and marine photographer, found herself at the Belize Barrier Reef. The sun was high, casting a golden glow over the crystal-clear waters. Emma had traveled far and wide, capturing the beauty of underwater life. But the Belize Barrier Reef was extraordinary. It was one of the world's most extensive and vibrant coral reefs. With her camera equipment ready, Emma suited up and plunged into the warm Caribbean waters. As she descended, the world above disappeared, replaced by a mesmerizing underwater paradise. Colorful corals of every shape and size decorated the seabed, and schools of fish darted around her, creating a living rainbow. Emma's mission was to capture the essence of the reef. Still, she also hoped for a rare encounter with a magnificent marine creature. She swam deeper, her eyes scanning every nook and cranny. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. There, gliding gracefully through the water, was a magnificent swordfish. Its long, sharp bill and sleek body shimmered in the sunlight that filtered through the water. Excited by sight, Emma carefully adjusted her camera and followed the swordfish. She moved slowly, making sure not to startle it. The swordfish swam calmly at first, seemingly unaware of Emma's presence. She captured shot after shot, each one more breathtaking than the last. The swordfish's powerful movements and the way it sliced through the water were mesmerizing. As Emma drew closer, the swordfish seemed to notice her. It paused for a moment, its large eyes locking onto her. Emma's heart pounded, but she remained focused on her task. She needed just a few more close-up shots to complete her collection. However, the swordfish suddenly changed its demeanor. It felt threatened by Emma's persistent presence, so it charged at her with incredible speed without warning. Emma barely had time to react as the swordfish's sharp bill pierced her diving equipment, causing a sharp pain in her side. Bubbles erupted from her punctured gear, and panic set in. Emma's mind raced. She had to fend off the swordfish and return to the surface before her air supply ran out. The swordfish wasn't giving up. It charged at her again, and Emma barely dodged its sharp bill. Her breathing became rapid and shallow as fear gripped her. She knew she had to act fast. Emma tried to push the swordfish away using her camera as a shield. The swordfish, relentless in its aggression, continued to attack. Emma's vision blurred with each movement, and her strength was waning. She kicked hard, trying to distance herself from the relentless predator. In her struggle, Emma's thoughts drifted to her family and friends. She couldn't let this be the end. She had to survive. Gathering her remaining strength, Emma reached for her emergency flare. She pulled the trigger and a bright, blinding light erupted from the flare. The swordfish, startled by the sudden burst of light, retreated momentarily. This was Emma's chance. She kicked her legs with all her might, propelling herself upward. The surface seemed so far away, but she couldn't give up. Every second counted, and her air supply was dwindling fast. Emma's injured side throbbed with pain, but she pushed through it, focusing on the light above. As she ascended, she glanced back to see the swordfish still lurking below, but it no longer pursued her. Emma's heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination. She had to make it to the surface. She had to survive. As Emma neared the surface, her lungs burned for fresh air. She broke through the water, gasping and coughing, the salty air filling her lungs. She floated on her back momentarily, allowing herself to catch her breath. The sun's warmth on her face was a comforting reminder that she had made it. But she wasn't safe yet. Her diving equipment was damaged and her side was bleeding. She needed to get back to her boat. Emma spotted her small boat anchored not far away. Summoning her remaining strength, she swam toward it, each movement sending a sharp pain through her side. Reaching the boat, Emma grabbed onto the side and hauled herself up with great effort. She collapsed onto the deck, breathing heavily. The reality of what had just happened sank in, and she felt relief and gratitude. She was alive. Emma knew she needed to tend to her wound. She rummaged through her emergency kit, finding some bandages and antiseptic. The cut wasn't deep, but it was painful. She cleaned and bandaged it as best as she could. The adrenaline wore off and she felt exhausted but couldn't rest. She needed to get back to shore and get proper medical attention. Emma started the boat's engine and navigated back towards the marina. The ride was slow and bumpy, but she focused on returning safely. The beautiful scenery of the reef that had once filled her with wonder now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the harrowing experience. Back at the marina, Emma was greeted by concerned faces. Her colleagues and the marina staff rushed to help her as she docked the boat. They listened in shock as she recounted her encounter with the aggressive swordfish. They helped her out of the ship and guided her to a nearby clinic. The doctor examined her wound, reassuring her that she would be okay with some rest and proper care. Emma felt a wave of relief. She had survived a terrifying ordeal and would live to tell the tale. Emma's story spread throughout the diving community in the days that followed. Many were amazed at her bravery and resilience. She reviewed the photos she had taken before the attack. They were some of the most stunning shots she had ever captured, a testament to the beauty and danger of the underwater world. Emma decided to use her experience as a lesson for others. She shared her story at diving seminars and workshops, emphasizing the importance of respecting marine life and being prepared for unexpected dangers. Her near-death experience had given her a new perspective on life and a renewed appreciation for the delicate balance of nature. Although the encounter had been terrifying, Emma didn't let it deter her from her passion. Once fully recovered, she returned to the water, more cautious but equally determined to continue her work. The ocean was her home. She knew she could coexist with its magnificent creatures with respect and care. The swordfish, still roaming the depths of the Belize Barrier Reef, remained a reminder of the wild and unpredictable nature of the sea. Emma's story was a powerful reminder to all divers always to be vigilant and respectful of the marine world. In 2004, a dedicated marine researcher, Dr. David Miller, found himself in the icy waters of Glacier Bay National Park in Alaska. The park, known for its stunning glaciers and diverse marine life, was the perfect place to study orcas. David was leading a whale-watching expedition to observe these magnificent creatures up close. The day was cold and clear, the sky a brilliant blue. David and his team had set out early in their small inflatable boat, eager to spot the orcas. As they navigated the frigid waters, David kept his eyes peeled for any sign of the whales. His heart raced excitedly as he saw the telltale dorsal fins slicing through the water. David was especially interested in one particular orca separated from its pod. The lone orca had been acting strangely, possibly agitated by recent encounters with boats. David hoped to understand its behavior and find a way to help it. As they drew closer, David could see the orca more clearly. It was a massive creature, its black and white body gliding effortlessly through the water. He raised his camera, ready to capture its movements. But something felt off. The orca's behavior was more erratic than usual, and David's excitement turned to concern. Suddenly, the orca turned and headed straight for their boat. David's heart skipped a beat. The orca rammed the side of the inflatable boat with tremendous force, sending it rocking violently. David was thrown into the freezing water, his body instantly numbed by the cold. Panic surged through him as he struggled to stay afloat. The orca was circling, its mighty jaws just beneath the surface. David knew he had to reach the safety of the larger research vessel, but it seemed so far away. The icy water sapped his strength, and his movements grew sluggish. Desperation gripped him as he kicked his legs, trying to distance himself from the orca. He glanced back, seeing the massive creature's fin cutting through the water, getting closer. David's mind raced, searching for a way to escape the orca's wrath and reach the safety of the larger boat. The cold water made every movement slow and heavy, but he knew he couldn't give up. He spotted a small ice floe just a short distance away and made it his immediate goal. Summoning every ounce of strength, David swam towards the ice floe. Sensing his movement, the orca followed closely, its presence a constant threat. David's breath came in ragged gasps, the frigid water biting his skin. He pushed forward, determined to survive. Finally, he reached the edge of the ice floe and hauled himself up with great effort. The ice was slippery and his hands were numb, but he pulled himself onto the solid surface. For a brief moment, he felt a wave of relief. But the orca still needed to be finished. It rammed the ice floe, causing it to crack and shift. David knew he couldn't stay on the ice floe for long. He needed to signal his team on the more extensive research vessel. He fumbled for the emergency flare in his pocket, his fingers clumsy from the cold. He ignited the flare with shaking hands, sending a bright red streak into the sky. His team on the research vessel spotted the signal and sprang into action. The boat sped towards David, cutting through the icy water with urgency. Distracted by the flare, the orca gave David a precious few moments of reprieve. He watched as the larger boat drew nearer, his hope rekindling. The research vessel reached him just in time. His colleagues threw him a lifeline, and David grabbed it with all his remaining strength. They pulled him aboard, his body trembling from the cold and exhaustion. Safe on the boat, David collapsed, breathing heavily but relieved to be out of the water. The orca lingered as the boat sped away, watching them from afar. David's heart pounded, but he knew he was safe now. His team wrapped him in blankets and checked his condition. Though he was bruised and cold, he would recover. The terrifying encounter with the aggressive orca deepened David's respect for these powerful creatures. He shared his experience with the marine research community back on land, highlighting the importance of understanding and protecting orcas in their natural habitat. David's ordeal became a tale of caution and respect. The orca, still roaming the waters of Glacier Bay National Park, remained a reminder of the wild and unpredictable nature of the sea. David continued his research, more determined than ever to find ways to coexist with these magnificent creatures. In 2001, Tom and his wife Lisa set out for a relaxing afternoon on their boat near the Farallon Islands off California, USA. The weather was perfect, with the sun shining brightly and a gentle breeze blowing across the water. Tom and Lisa loved these peaceful outings, where they could escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Tom, in a playful mood, decided to spice up their day with a harmless prank. As they cruised along the coast, he grinned mischievously and leaned over to Lisa, who was gazing at the horizon. Without a second thought, he gently pushed her, sending her splashing into the cool blue water. Tom expected her to surface laughing, perhaps a little annoyed but amused by his antics. However, as Lisa hit the water, she let out a startled scream. Tom's smile faded as he realized she hadn't expected the push. He watched the water, waiting for her to reappear and scold him for the prank. But seconds ticked by, and Lisa didn't surface. Instead, the water around where she had fallen began to turn a murky shade of red. Panic seized Tom's heart as he leaned over the side of the boat, desperately searching for Lisa. His voice was frantic, filled with mounting dread. Suddenly he saw a massive dorsal fin slicing through the water. A great white shark was attacking Lisa, drawn by the disturbance and scent of blood. Tom's world turned upside down. He grabbed a rope and life ring, desperate to save his wife. He threw the ring towards her, but the shark was relentless, thrashing violently in the water. Tom could barely see Lisa amidst the chaos, her screams piercing his ears and tearing at his heart. Tom's voice was choked with fear and guilt as he desperately tried to help Lisa. He yanked the boat's emergency horn, hoping the loud noise might scare the shark away. The blaring sound echoed across the water, but the shark seemed undeterred. It circled Lisa, its mighty jaws snapping hungrily. Tom's mind raced, searching for anything he could use to fend off the predator. He grabbed a boat hook, leaned over the side, and jabbed it toward the shark. The shark responded with a violent lunge, nearly capsizing the boat. Tom's grip on the hook tightened, his knuckles white with fear. The water around Lisa churned with a horrifying mix of blood and foam. Tom's eyes filled with tears as he realized the gravity of his mistake. This was supposed to be a fun outing, a light-hearted day on the water. Now it had turned into a nightmare. Lisa's struggles grew weaker and her cries for help faded. Tom's heart shattered as he watched helplessly, unable to stop the relentless shark attack. Desperately, he thrust the boat hook toward the shark, hoping against hope to drive it away. But his efforts seemed futile. As the minutes passed, the shark finally retreated, leaving a gruesome scene behind. Tom pulled Lisa's lifeless body from the water, his hands trembling. A crushing weight of guilt and sorrow replaced the joy and laughter of the morning. Tom cradled Lisa's lifeless body in his arms, tears streaming down his face. A crushing weight of guilt and sorrow replaced the joy and laughter of the morning. He gently laid her down on the deck, his heart shattered by the reality of what had happened. The clear waters around the Farallon Islands, once a symbol of their peaceful escapes, now felt like a cruel reminder of his fatal mistake. Tom's mind raced as he thought about what to do next. He knew he had to get back to shore, but every part of him wanted to stay frozen in time, unable to face the world without Lisa. With trembling hands, he started the boat's engine and turned it towards the mainland. The journey felt endless, the boat cutting through the waves that now seemed indifferent to his pain. As Tom approached the marina, he radioed ahead for help. His voice was barely recognizable, choked with grief. He conveyed the devastating news. There had been an accident and Lisa was gone. The response was immediate, the urgency in the operator's voice comforting his numb mind. They assured him that emergency services would be waiting when he docked. The boat docked at the marina, and paramedics rushed to Tom's aid. They gently took Lisa's body, confirming what Tom already knew, but couldn't fully accept. She was gone. The police arrived shortly after, and Tom was taken to a small room at the marina for questioning. He recounted the events with a heavy heart, each word a painful reminder of his actions. News of the tragedy spread quickly through the small coastal town. Friends and family were shocked and heartbroken. Tom's guilt was overwhelming, and he struggled to find any solace. He spent days and a daze, replaying the moment repeatedly in his mind, wishing he could take it all back. The funeral was a sad affair. Lisa's family and friends gathered to say their final goodbyes. Tom stood by her casket, his eyes red and swollen from days of crying. He felt the weight of their sorrow and the burden of his guilt. He wanted to speak, apologize, and make amends, but words failed him. In the following weeks, Tom isolated himself, haunted by the memories of that fateful day. He couldn't escape the image of Lisa's terrified face, the blood in the water, and the shark's relentless attack. He knew he needed to find a way to cope, but nothing seemed to help. Finally, a close friend suggested he seek counseling. Reluctantly, Tom agreed. The sessions were painful but necessary. He spoke about his guilt, sorrow, and desperate wish to act differently. Through therapy, he began to understand that while his actions had tragic consequences, he needed to find a way to forgive himself. Tom also contacted Lisa's family, expressing his deep remorse. It was a difficult conversation, filled with tears and pain, but it was a step toward healing. Lisa's family, though devastated, recognized that Tom's prank had been a terrible mistake, not a malicious act. As time passed, Tom began to channel his grief into raising awareness about the dangers of pranks and the importance of safety around wildlife. He started a foundation in Lisa's name dedicated to promoting marine safety and education. Speaking at schools and community centers, Tom shared his story, hoping to prevent others from making the same tragic mistake. Though the pain of losing Lisa would never entirely go away, Tom found a sense of purpose in his mission. He knew that he could never undo what had happened. Still, he could honor Lisa's memory by positively impacting the world. Each day was a step towards healing, a journey of remembrance and redemption. In the year 2000, wildlife photographer Kevin Moore embarked on an expedition to Wrangel Island, Russia, to document the lives of seals on the ice floes. The Arctic was a harsh and unforgiving environment, but its beauty and unique wildlife drew Kevin every year. He had spent countless hours preparing for this trip, eager to capture the intimate moments of the seal colony. The day was clear and bitterly cold, the sun a distant orb barely providing warmth. Dressed in heavy Arctic gear, Kevin stepped carefully onto the ice floe. His camera was ready, its lens glinting in the pale light. He moved slowly and deliberately, not wanting to startle the seals. As he approached a group of seals lounging on the ice, he marveled at their serene presence. Kevin's focus landed on a mother seal and her pup. The pup was playful, rolling around on the ice while the mother watched protectively. Kevin knew he had to get closer for the perfect shot, but also understood the risks. He edged forward, his camera clicking softly. The mother seal eyed him warily but remained calm. Lost in his work, Kevin failed to notice just how close he was getting. The mother seal suddenly tensed, sensing a potential threat. Kevin realized his mistake too late. The ordinarily docile seal transformed into a fierce protector. With a mighty lunge, she charged at Kevin, her speed and aggression catching him off guard. Kevin stumbled backward, his boots slipping on the icy surface. He hit the ground hard, the cold seeping through his clothes. The mother seal was relentless, her barks loud and menacing. She snapped her jaws and slapped her flippers against the ice, driving Kevin further away from her pup. Panic set in as Kevin scrambled to his feet. He tried to retreat, but the ice was treacherous, causing him to slip and slide. The mother seals advanced, her eyes locked on him, determined to protect her young. Kevin's heart raced, knowing he had to think quickly to survive this unexpected encounter. His icebreaker ship was anchored a short distance away, a beacon of safety in the vast, icy expanse. Kevin's mind raced as he plotted his escape. He couldn't risk further provoking the seal, but couldn't stay where he was. He took a deep breath, focusing on moving slowly and steadily away from the agitated mother seal. The seal followed, her aggression undiminished. Kevin's every step was a precarious dance on the slippery ice. He kept his eyes on the ship, willing to reach it without incident. The icy wind whipped around him, but he pushed forward, knowing his survival depended on his ability to outmaneuver the protective mother. Kevin kept his eyes on the ship, willing to reach it without incident. The icy wind whipped around him, but he pushed forward, knowing his survival depended on his ability to outmaneuver the protective mother. Every step was a struggle. The ice beneath Kevin's feet was unforgiving, making it difficult to maintain his balance. The mother seal was relentless, her barks echoing across the ice floe. Kevin tried to keep his movement slow and steady, hoping not to provoke her further. However, the seal's determination was unyielding. As Kevin moved, he scanned the area for anything that might help him. He spotted a cluster of ice ridges that could offer temporary cover. Summoning his courage, he made a careful dash towards them. The seal lunged after him, but the ridges provided enough obstacle to slow her down. Kevin crouched behind the ice ridges, taking a moment to breathe. His hands trembled from the cold and the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He peeked over the hill, seeing the seal still searching for him. He knew this respite wouldn't last long. He had to make his move. Timing his next steps carefully, Kevin waited until the seal was momentarily distracted by another sound on the ice. He used the opportunity to slip around the ridge and head towards his ship. The icebreaker was so close now, but the path was still difficult. Kevin's careful pace allowed him to progress steadily, but the seal soon noticed his movement again. With renewed vigor, she charged once more. Kevin's heart pounded as he picked up his pace, his boots slipping on the ice. He could now see the ship's crew waving and shouting, their voices carried away by the wind. The final stretch was the most treacherous. Kevin felt the ice crack beneath him, but he pushed forward with all his might. The ship's crew had thrown a rope ladder over the side, dangling within reach. Kevin lunged for it, his fingers grasping the cold, rough rope. Kevin pulled himself up with a mighty heave, his muscles screaming in protest. The seal reached the ladder's base, snapping her jaws in frustration. But she couldn't climb. Kevin climbed higher, his body shaking with exhaustion and relief. The crew helped him aboard, pulling him to safety. Once on the ship, Kevin collapsed, gasping for breath. His body was battered and bruised, but he was alive. The crew wrapped him in warm blankets and the ship's medic checked him. Despite the ordeal, Kevin knew he had been fortunate. As the icebreaker pulled away from the ice floe, Kevin looked back at the mother seal who had returned to her pup. He felt a profound respect for her fierce protectiveness. The experience had been terrifying, but also reinforced the bond between mother and child in the wild. Kevin's photographs, though incomplete, told a powerful story. He knew he would never forget this day. The ice floe terror would serve as a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of wildlife and the respect it commanded. Back home, he would share his tale, using his harrowing encounter to advocate for greater understanding and protection of these magnificent creatures. In 2002, Dr. Claire Bennett, a dedicated biologist, found herself deep in the heart of the Honey Island swamp in Louisiana. The swamp was a lush, mysterious place, teeming with wildlife and dense with vegetation. Claire was there to track the movements of alligators, studying their behavior and habitats. The project was part of a broader effort to understand and preserve the delicate ecosystem of the bayou. The day was humid, the air thick with the scent of moss and water. Claire navigated her small boat through the narrow waterways, her eyes sharp and alert. She had spent years in the field and was familiar with the dangers of the swamp. However, her passion for wildlife and conservation always outweighed her fears. As she moved through the marshland, Claire spotted several alligators basking on the banks. She noted their positions and behavior in her field journal, using her binoculars to get a closer look. The swamp was alive with sounds, the croaks of frogs, the birds' calls, and the leaves rustling. Suddenly, Claire noticed something unusual. Among the alligators, a massive crocodile lay partially submerged in the water. Crocodiles were not native to this part of Louisiana, and this one seemed particularly large and menacing. Claire's curiosity was piqued, but so was her sense of caution. She steered her boat closer to get a better look, careful not to disturb the creature. As she approached, the crocodile's eyes snapped open, locking onto her. Claire's heart skipped a beat. The reptile's gaze was intense, and she could sense its agitation. She quickly realized this was no ordinary crocodile. It was unusually aggressive and likely displaced from its natural habitat. Before Claire could react, the crocodile jumped at the boat with terrifying speed. The force of the attack capsized the small vessel, sending Claire tumbling into the murky water. The cold swamp water enveloped her, and she struggled to surface. Her mind raced with thoughts of survival as she fought to stay calm. Breaking through the surface, Claire gasped for air. The crocodile was still nearby, its presence a constant threat. She had to act quickly. Using her knowledge of the swamp, she identified the closest cypress tree, its roots creating a natural barrier in the water. Claire swam towards it, hoping to use the tree as a temporary refuge. Reaching the tree, she pulled herself onto the roots, her hands slipping on the wet, moss-covered bark. The crocodile circled below, its eyes never leaving her. Claire's heart pounded as she tried to think of her next move. She needed to find a way to signal for help or reach a safer location, but the dense marshland made it challenging to see a clear path. Claire knew she couldn't stay on the tree roots forever. The crocodile was relentless, and she had to find a way to escape. She scanned the surrounding swamp, looking for anything that might help her. Her boat was overturned, and her equipment scattered, but she spotted her backpack floating nearby. It contained a flare gun and other survival tools. Summoning her courage, Claire planned her next move. She would have to distract the crocodile long enough to retrieve her backpack and use the flare gun to signal for help. The swamp was vast, and she needed to figure out how far she was from the nearest ranger station, but she had to try. Taking a deep breath, Claire prepared to dive back into the water. The crocodile was still close, its powerful body cutting through the murky depths. She knew this was a dangerous gamble, but it was her best chance at survival. Gathering her strength, she pushed off the tree roots. She swam towards her floating backpack, praying she could outmaneuver the predator and reach safety. The murky water made it difficult to see, but Claire's determination kept her focused. Every second felt like an eternity as she kicked her legs, propelling herself forward. The crocodile, sensing her movement, surged towards her. Claire's heart pounded, but she kept her eyes on the backpack. Just as she reached it, the crocodile lunged, its mighty jaws snapping shut mere inches from her leg. Claire grabbed the bag and twisted away, using all her strength to pull herself onto another cluster of roots nearby. Breathing heavily, Claire quickly unzipped the backpack and pulled out the flare gun. She loaded it with shaking hands, knowing this might be her only chance to signal for help. The crocodile circled below, its eyes fixed on her every move. Claire aimed the flare gun skyward and fired. The bright red flare shot into the sky, illuminating the swamp with a sudden burst of light. The sound and light momentarily confused the crocodile. Seizing the opportunity, Claire scanned the area to find a way to reach higher ground. She spotted a narrow path of solid land leading to a higher bank. It was risky, but it was her best option. She secured the backpack on her shoulders, took a deep breath, and plunged back into the water. Swimming with all her might, Claire made her way toward the path. The crocodile, recovering from its momentary distraction, followed closely behind. Claire's muscles burned with exertion, but she pushed herself harder, desperate to reach safety. As she neared the path, she felt a sharp pain in her leg. The crocodile had nipped her, its teeth grazing her calf. Claire screamed but didn't stop. She used the adrenaline surging her body to propel herself onto the solid ground. She scrambled up the bank, slipping on the wet, muddy surface. The crocodile lunged one last time, its jaws snapping shut, just as Claire pulled herself out of its reach. Exhausted and in pain, she collapsed on the bank, her body trembling. She knew she couldn't rest yet. The flare would only bring help if someone saw it. Claire forced herself to stand and began limping along the path, calling out for help. Her voice echoed through the swamp, a desperate plea in the vast, silent wilderness. Minutes felt like hours as she continued, each step a painful reminder of her close encounter with the crocodile. Just as Claire's strength began to wane, she heard a distant shout. She looked up to see a group of rangers approaching her, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Relief washed over her, and she stumbled forward, meeting them halfway. The rangers quickly assessed her injuries and helped her onto a stretcher. As they carried her back to their boat, Claire recounted the harrowing experience. They listened with wide eyes, amazed at her bravery and resourcefulness. The ride back to the ranger station was filled with reassurances and promises of medical attention. At the station, Claire was treated for her injuries. Though exhausted and shaken, she was grateful to be alive. The encounter with the crocodile had been terrifying, but it also highlighted the unpredictable nature of the swamp. Claire knew she would need time to recover, both physically and mentally. Still, she also felt renewed respect for the environment in which she studied. As she lay in the medical bay, Claire thought about the research she had come to conduct. The swamp was a place of beauty and danger, and her experience had only deepened her commitment to understanding and protecting it. In 2010, marine ecologist Dr. Mark Andrews embarked on a crucial dive in the Coral Sea off the coast of Australia. His research site and passion were the vibrant coral reefs teeming with life. Mark was studying the effects of climate change on these delicate ecosystems, hoping to gather data that could help preserve them for future generations. The day was perfect for diving. The sun shone brightly and the clear water offered excellent visibility. Mark adjusted his diving mask and breathed deeply before plunging into the warm, inviting waters. As he descended, the underwater world opened up, a mesmerizing array of colors and shapes. Schools of fish darted around, and the coral formations stretched like an underwater city. Mark swam deeper, eyes scanning the reef for signs of bleaching and other damage caused by rising ocean temperatures. His careful and deliberate movements ensured he didn't disturb the fragile coral. He paused frequently to take notes and photographs, documenting the reef's health. Suddenly, something caught his eye, a rare and beautiful sea snake, its body gliding gracefully through the water. The snake's scales shimmered in the sunlight, displaying vibrant colors. Mark knew this species was highly venomous, but he couldn't resist the opportunity to observe it up close. He moved slowly, his camera ready to capture the stunning creature. As Mark approached, the sea snake seemed to sense his presence. It turned towards him, its eyes locking onto his. For a moment, there was a tense standoff. Mark held his breath, hoping the snake would continue on its way. But the snake became agitated, its movements growing erratic. Before Mark could react, the snake struck with lightning speed, its fangs sinking into his arm. A sharp pain shot through him, and he recoiled, watching in horror as the snake retreated into the coral. Mark knew the seriousness of the situation. The sea snake's venom was potent, and he had only a short window to reach the surface and get the antidote waiting on his research vessel. Mark's vision began to blur and his limbs grew heavy. The venom was taking effect quickly. He glanced around, trying to orient himself. The intricate maze of the reef now seemed like a labyrinth designed to thwart his escape. He needed to navigate back to the surface, but every second counted. Summoning his remaining strength, Mark began to swim towards the surface. His movements were sluggish and he struggled to stay focused. The coral formations that had once fascinated him now appeared as obstacles in his path. He kicked his legs harder, pushing himself to move faster despite the growing numbness in his limbs. Mark's mind raced as he thought about the antidote on the research vessel. He knew his team would be monitoring his dive and would have seen his distress signal. But he couldn't rely solely on them. He had to return alone. The thought of his family and his commitment to his research fueled his determination. As he swam, he kept a wary eye for the sea snake, fearing another encounter. The reef was moving, and every shadow seemed like a potential threat. Mark's breaths came in ragged gasps through his regulator, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The surface seemed impossible, but Mark knew he couldn't give up. He had to reach safety, not just for himself, but for the future of the reefs he was dedicated to protecting. With each stroke, he fought against the venom coursing through his veins, determined to survive this lethal encounter. As Mark ascended, his vision blurred further and his limbs grew heavier. He focused on training, counting his strokes and regulating his breathing, trying to stay as calm as possible. He knew panic would only accelerate the spread of the venom. The coral's colors became hazy, and he could barely see the surface above him. Suddenly, Mark felt a sharp pain in his leg. He looked in horror to see another sea snake coiled around his calf. The snake struck again, its venom seeping into his bloodstream. Mark's heart pounded and he shook the snake off, but the additional venom made his situation even more dire. He could feel the paralysis creeping in, his movements becoming more labored. Desperation set in as Mark pushed himself harder, his body protesting with every stroke. He could see the silhouette of his research vessel above, the shadowy outline, a beacon of hope. His team would be ready, but he had to get there first. He kept moving, each kick of his legs a battle against the venom's debilitating effects. With the surface within reach, Mark's strength was nearly gone. His vision tunneled, and his consciousness wavered. Summoning his last energy reserves, he broke through the surface, gasping for air. The research vessel was just a short distance away, and he could see his team waving frantically, already lowering the emergency ladder. Mark's body was numb, but he grabbed onto the ladder. His colleagues pulled him aboard, their faces etched with concern. He collapsed onto the deck, barely able to speak. The team quickly administered the antidote. Mark felt a cold rush as the medication entered his bloodstream, countering the venom's effects. The minutes that followed were a blur. Mark's vision slowly cleared and the paralysis began to subside. The team worked efficiently, treating his wounds and monitoring his vital signs. He could feel the warmth returning to his limbs, and the pain in his leg and arm became more bearable. As he lay on the deck recovering, Mark reflected on the harrowing experience. The sea snakes had been a stark reminder of the unpredictability and danger of the underwater world. He had come to the Coral Sea to study the effects of climate change. Still, he had encountered a different, equally urgent challenge. Once stabilized, Mark sat up with the help of his colleagues. The research vessel was heading back to the mainland where he would receive further medical attention. He looked out at the vast expanse of water, feeling relief and gratitude. His dedication to marine ecology had never wavered. Still, this experience deepened his respect for the ocean's power and creatures. Back on land, Mark's recovery continued. He shared his story with fellow researchers, emphasizing the importance of caution and respect in their work. The incident with the sea snakes became a valuable lesson for him and the scientific community. Mark's ordeal had been a close call, but it reinforced his commitment to protecting the world's oceans. The reefs of the Coral Sea, with their vibrant life and hidden dangers, were worth every risk.